Good afternoon, this is Maggie with My Nana's Needles, and we are on to our second video of creating the Dillion Bifold Wallet. We are to cut our wax thread in 5 times the length that we're going to sew. So I went ahead and I measured, and it's a little more than 1/2 inch. I just went ahead and measured the bottom. They usually provide plenty of thread for you to do that. So the bottom is about 1 inch long. So I cut each piece of thread, and I'm gonna need 4 of them. I cut each piece of thread 5 inches long. And actually it's a little bit more than 5 inches, but I cut them, about 5 inches, smidge more. Now we're going to thread our needle. I'm gonna set my other pieces of thread I already cut to the side because I needed 4 of them. You have to thread both ends of this needle. So, yep, put it on. And it usually goes in pretty quick. They also sent 2 needles. Now, once you've done this, you slide the needle back. Now, give yourself plenty of sewing room because these needles are fairly large and you're gonna need to wiggle them in and out of the holes. So what I did was I pulled the thread as far down as I could, and then I went back here near the front, not too close to the edge because this thread will separate, and I put my needle right through the middle of that thread. Now I'm gonna slide this down, and as I slide this down, I'm pulling this bottom thread. And I just pull this down and wiggle it, and now my thread is locked in place and will not come out. And the reason I said you need to, keep a decent amount is because I've also got to do this to the other end. When you sew leather, you're doing saddle stitches, and they require you to use both ends of the thread to lock it in place. So again, slid it down, found a spot up here near the beginning, but not too close. Give me 1 second. Stab it through the center, and the needles aren't very sharp because the holes are already punched in the kits. So I stabbed it through there. I pull this thread, it pulls it down. I grab a hold of the end and just pull it down and lock it in place. Now to do this, we are adding our T pockets to our pocket wall. And if you notice, you can't see it real well in this leather because it's kind of veined. So if you turn it over, you'll see there are 2 sets of holes here. This first pocket is gonna line up with this first set of holes. So what I tend to do is I figure out which end am I gonna start, and I'll go ahead and place my needle in the first hole and in the second hole. So they're side by side. Then I grab my T pocket, and since I'm doing the first one, I put the needle in each of the first 2 holes, just like I did on the back one. On the pocket wall. Give me 1 second. I usually do a lot of flipping while I'm doing it. And as you see, both of them are in there. That once you start tacking this down, it will stay in place, and we will stitch these sides at a later time. Oh, needle fell out. So I'm gonna flip it over, figure out which hole it fell out of. And as you see, they're very easy. Now I grab both needles and I try to keep them even. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. One may come through easier than the other. Once I get them through, I try to keep my threads equal distance, like equal length. Let me line this one up a little bit better. There we go. Now to do this, you don't ever want to stitch back through the thread. So I grab my second thread and I pull it up, but I take my first needle and slide it through the second hole. Pull it through, pull both ends tight. Then I go to my third hole in the back with my bottom needle. I find the third hole, and you can flip these as you do it. Find the third hole, wiggle the pocket around till I can find the third hole up here. And sometimes you have to move it to see it. Found the third hole. Because I did that wiggling, I'm gonna pull my threads tight again in the back and the front just to make sure it's secured. Pull my thread up. This one now switches up, and the second one now goes down into that hole without going through the other thread. Once I get it all the way through, I then pull both threads tight. My bottom needle finds my fourth hole, comes back up. It now becomes my side, and my other needle goes down. And you see how I'm having to tip this? That's why it's nice to make sure you have plenty of thread. Sometimes I do more than what they recommend just so that I have, especially in a small space, so I have enough room to maneuver them because we need to backstitch these. So I pull this one down, grab the top, pull it tight. Now I need to take my bottom needle and I need to flip this over so I can see what I'm doing. And we're hoping, actually on this one, because it's such a tight area, I'm just gonna go ahead and take my top needle and go through the bottom thread, through the third hole. You'll see there's already a thread there. We already did. I'm going backwards now. I went through my third hole and I'm gonna pull this through. If I had done more thread that would have given me more room to maneuver my needles, I would have kind of backstitched this whole thing. So this would have been pretty thick. But because I didn't give myself more thread, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna flip it over, grab my scissors, and I'm gonna clip off my needle ends. Clip off my needle ends. Lay those to the side. Now I'm gonna take these two pieces of thread and I'm just gonna tie them in a knot because it will lay flat. And then what I will do is I will grab a lighter after I've done both pockets. And sorry if my hands are in the way. I just grab it, tie it in a knot, pull it tight, do my second one. And this helps usually if you have a pair of tweezers, especially if you're dealing with short threads. Luckily I have fingernails, so I was able to grab it that way. Pull it down, tie it tight, lay it to the side. Because I'm gonna come back with, once I've done the second T pocket for this one, I'm going to come back with a lighter and I'm gonna singe these so that because it's wax thread, it will melt together and will not come undone. So now I'm gonna flip this back over and I'm gonna line this up with the second bottom set of the holes. And in doing so, I have now created 1, 2, and when I add this to the top, it'll be 1, 2, 3 credit card holders. So let me go ahead and thread another, and you gotta pull your little threads that you cut off out, and just set them to the side. And we're gonna do the same thing. Sometimes if I'm working quickly or I just want to keep going instead of stopping, I will find some of my own needles that I keep around, and they don't have to be sharp because there's already holes punctured. So I just grab some of my own needles and I'll go ahead and thread both ends of each thread so that I don't have to stop. I can just keep going. But because I'm demonstrating this for you guys, I thought I would go ahead and show you how to do it again. Again, you thread both ends of the needle, slide it down so you can fold it around. You get to the edge here and you find the center and you pierce it. The thing about wax thread is once you pierce it and you pull it down, it creates its own knot and it does not like to come undone unless the threads separate. So that's why you don't get too close to the edge. So now that I've got that in place, I'm gonna go around to the back again and I'm gonna find my first hole. I'm gonna find my second hole. And then I'm just going to place my pocket. And what I'll do actually is I'll slide one of these higher than the other and hold it like that. So this will go in the first hole so I don't mix them up. And sometimes you just have to flip them around to find the holes. Some holes are smaller than others, so you have to wiggle it a little more. Then I find my second one, and again, I just line up my needles, pull them both out at the same time to make sure that I've got equal amount on both needles. Then I'm gonna take the needle from my second hole and fold it up. The needle from my first hole goes back through the second hole to the back. Pull both threads tight, front and back. Bring my needle from the back to the third hole. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Find the hole there, pull it through, pull it up. This now lays up. This one goes, the one that came up through my second hole is now gonna go down through my third hole. And this is, again, the saddle stitch. And as you see, it gets a little snug. You just gotta wiggle, wiggle, pull. Then I'm gonna get both threads again, pulling tight. The bottom needle now comes up through the fourth hole, and it takes a little wiggle, wiggle, find it. The leather is very sturdy, so wiggle, wiggle, wiggle till you find the holes works great. You can't hurt the leather. Again, pull it up, that one lays to the side, and the needle that came up through my third hole will now go down through my fourth hole. And as you see, it gets a little snug right here because the threads are a little short. And you just gotta wiggle, wiggle, wiggle till you get it in there. Next time I will make these a little bit longer. So if you decide to purchase the Dillion wallet after this, I would probably go with about 6 inches worth of thread at least to get through. So I wiggle it, and I can separate them a little and wiggle it. And this one's being a little difficult in trying to go in that hole. There we go, got it. Now because I did that, I just wanna give a tug on this one that was not in. And when you do it again, it'll pull it tight again. So wiggle, 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 pull it through, grab both ends, snug tight. Leave my bottom one hanging, take my top one, and go back through the third hole. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. I'm gonna pull this one down. Now that I've got them both down tight, I'm gonna grab my threads, I'm gonna pull them tight, and I'm gonna clip off my needles. Lay that to the side. Then I'm gonna grab these ends again. And I'm just gonna make a quick little knot, and again another little knot, and like I said, having a pair of tweezers handy is great. Other parts we won't be doing these knots. We will be pulling the threads through the back and melting them, but we won't be tying a knot because we will back stitch further along. All right, now we've got 2 of our pockets situated. This now will lay over top of this pocket, and I will stitch down this side. So since I'm going down this side, I need to measure how long is this. And this looks like, let me turn my ruler around. This looks like we are at 3, I'm gonna say 3.5. It's actually a little more than 3.25, but I'm gonna go ahead and go with 3.5. Now we have to do 5 times that. So 3.5 times 5 is 15, 16.5. So I will grab my thread, and I've just got it laying over here up to the side, and I will reach for my bigger ruler just because it's easier. And I'm gonna do 15.5, so, or 16.5, excuse me. So I'm gonna go ahead and find my half up here, take it off to the end, grab my scissors, and snip it. And my roller to the side, undo all of these little threads, and you'll see now the blankets, the saddle stitch works a little bit better when you have longer distances and longer threads. Again, I'm gonna pull it through, find where I wanna pierce it through, pull the bottom string, pulling it down, and then I grab both pieces and just wiggle it in there tight. And I do that again with the other thread as well. And see, it does not want to come out. So I need to get my scissors and cut it closer and wiggle that out. When it's in there good. And finally wiggle. Nope, did not wiggle it out. It does not want to come out. There we go. Again, we thread the needle, slide it down so we can fold the needle around to lock it in the thread, and you just put it up there, pull the bottom, pulling it down, snug it in tight. Okay, now I'm gonna start at the top of this one. And actually, I'm gonna start at the top of this one, and I'm gonna be doing this side. I'm sorry, I looked at the wrong side. I'm just gonna go straight down this side and do this side, because this is the inside of the pocket. This will be the outside of the pocket that attaches to the outside of my wallet. So we're gonna start over here. And things are gonna move around, they're gonna slide, what have you. It's okay, just wiggle it around. So I put the first needle in, I put the second needle in, I put the second needle in, and when I'm doing this, I'm making sure that I've got everything lined up. And Tandy sends you a booklet for this wallet, and this hole is supposed to be lined up with the third hole. So I'm gonna make sure I don't grab it yet. And I'm gonna go ahead, like I said, get my needles even, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Sometimes it's better to wiggle one and then get them even. All right, got them both pretty much even, pull it straight up. And again, the needle that went through the second hole is gonna lay to the side, and the needle that went through the first hole is gonna go down through the second hole. And then I'm just gonna pull that. Oops, make sure I didn't grab the other thread. Uh-oh, we got super short there. There we go, we can still work these out. And this one's gonna be a little shorter. There we go, you gotta be careful because sometimes that happens. You pull and it pulls the needle from the top, especially when you're first getting started. Okay, now I'm going into my third hole. So from the bottom, I find the third hole. And once you get in the habit of doing this, you can do it by feel. You push it up through the third hole. The one that came up through the third hole stays to the side. The one that came up through the second hole is now gonna go down through the third hole. And again, once I get to the bottom, I'm gonna tug on both sides, just like that. And then I just follow that same pattern all the way down. Now this pocket, because it's down a smidge, I'm gonna make it line up with my fourth hole. Come on. Actually, that doesn't want to line up with the fourth hole. That one looks like it's lining up with the fifth hole. Let me just make sure. I'm just playing with this a second. That's the fourth hole. Yeah, that one's gonna line up with the fifth hole. So the fourth hole, we're just gonna come up through the bottom. Doesn't catch anything on the top, just comes straight up, folds over to the side, the one that came up through that hole now goes down, and you may have to smidge it just a little underneath this band, and there's the hole. Push it down, pull it through, grab both sides, snug it tight. Now we're going to go through that second pocket. So we find our other hole, and then we pull it right up through the top of that pocket. Push this over, take this one down. Okay? Once we get here, we now need to stop. Pull it tight and stop. We don't want to forget our top pocket, the one that finishes it off, because my next needle may be coming through. Yes, will probably be coming through this one. So I'm going to hold it in place by my hand, and you can buy a clamp that will hold these in place. I just tend to prefer to hold them. This way I can flip them, move them, do whatever I need to do. So my bottom needle is going to find my fifth hole. It's going to come up and it's going to wiggle around till it finds that hole. Is that pulling that off? It sure is. So this must be, again, a hole that doesn't have the pocket. So let's push that up, pull it through. We don't need this pocket yet. It had another hole underneath to lock this in. So I grab this one, put it back through that one. And there we go. Grab both threads, again, pulling it tight. Now we're gonna catch this top pocket. My bottom needle is gonna go through this hole, come up and find the top hole of this pocket. And you can push it through and then lay the pocket on it if that's what you'd like to do. Sometimes it's easier. Once this is up, now these are gonna slide. At this point, if I wanted to, I could grab a binder clip and clip right here just to hold it in place. But again, it's just easier for me to hold it by hand. So now I'm gonna take this one, hold this one to the side, take this one, take it back through this hole. And it's gonna wiggle around until you get a couple of stitches in. So you just wiggle it till you find the hole again. But make sure you went through the right hole. You don't wanna skip any. So you get it, snug it tight. I hold the things in place again, flip it over, find the back hole. Look, right immediately went into its hole. I didn't even have to wiggle anymore. Hold that down, take this one back through, and snug it up tight. Now you see, now it's starting to stay in place. I don't have to do as much holding. And just found the hole in the back, pulled it up, flipped it over, same thing, back through. And as you get more threads in there, sometimes it gets a little thick. If you need to get a pair of pliers to pull it through, you can. If I'm not sure I'm getting the hole, I'm still in a position where I can open it up to look, to make sure I found it. And once I do that, I go ahead and just give these guys another snug pull before I push it through, just to make sure I didn't loosen anything up too much. Again, pull it tight. And I just keep going until I get to the bottom. And actually with this one, I will go all the way to this bottom hole, and then I will back stitch to hold it in place. And I'll show you the back stitch when I get there. Again, wiggle it around, pull it through, snug it up, take it down, find the hole in the bottom. And again, you can flip it. Like I said, some of these holes are bigger than others, and that just determines the amount. It was just determined by the amount of pressure that was put on it when the holes were being put in. So I pull this up, hold this, move this one back through. That one went through fairly easy. Pull it, snug it. It just becomes routine. Pull it up, lay it to the side, grab that one, push it through, snug it up. Find the hole in the bottom, pull it through. Second one goes down, pull it through, snug it up. And we're almost at the end. It doesn't take very long to do these small projects. I've done some leather stitching where I was using some pretty long thread and it was taking some time because I had to go all the way around a purse. But they're so pretty when they're finished. And you snug it through. Snug it up. All right, we're at the last hole. So we'll go ahead and pull this up. And this is where we're going to start back stitching. This one will go down just like we just did. We'll finish up that stitch. We'll snug it. Now we're going to go backwards. The bottom needle is now going to go back to the previous hole, which is right. Hold on. Previous hole is right there, and you just wiggle it around till you get it through. Now, because I was fiddling with that thread, I just took it back to the previous hole, push it up, and because this one just came up, it's going to get laid to the side, and this one that was already up is now going to go back through that third hole. And I do this for about 2, maybe 3 stitches, and it locks it in place. And you see, I just got to wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And this is where, if I needed to, I could grab a pair of pliers to pull it through, because it gets a little tight when you've got 3 and 4 threads in that hole. But I didn't bring my pliers. There we go. Just wiggle it till it comes out. Again, snug it up tight. This one will go into the next hole. So you just wiggle it around. I usually flip these over to find that hole because it gets a little tight, and then just push it up through. And this is probably where I will stop on this one. 2 stitches for this one is probably going to be good, because no, I may do 3 because this side is probably not going to be. We're gonna lay that one, take this one. This side will not be stitched down to the wallet. This will be an open spot. So I push it back through the hole, pull it down, and I'm gonna do one more, and then I'll show you how I finish that. All right, there's that one. Pull them snug. Then I'm gonna go through the next hole, and it takes a minute sometimes to find it when you're using dark colored thread. There we go, found it. Push it through. You can even use finger grips that can hold onto the needles a little better. Sometimes I use them, sometimes I don't. I like to feel what I'm doing with my fingertips. So now I'm gonna hold this one to the side, take this one back into that hole. Try to keep my hands out of the way. Push it through. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And since this is the last full hole I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pull this down. And again, we're gonna snug it up like we did, but I'm gonna let this hang. Now I'm gonna take this top needle and I'm gonna go through the very next hole. Pushing through, pulling out, and we are done. That has back stitched 3 stitches so it will hold in place. And once I have cut these needles off and tied it off, I will get my lighter and singe them, locking them in place. my needles off, tie my thread off, and I just tug it real tight. And again, tug it real tight. And then I have all this extra thread, so I'm gonna clip that to about that length, and I'll lay the trash over there. And again, these right here where I have snugged them up and tied them, I'm just gonna clip them down just a smidge because it's easier to melt it if it's not quite as long. I don't wanna burn it, I just wanna melt it so that it locks in place. Okay. Grab my lighter. And with my lighter, I will now just hit it, mash it down with my finger. Carefully hit it again, mash it with my finger. It kind of melts it in place. And I just like to make sure it's melted in place. Nothing burnt, it just melted right in place. And you see it's formed a nice lock stitch there. Again, same thing, hit them, pull them in, hit them, pull them in, lock them in place. See, this one's gonna be a little harder because, there we go. And it's not too hot. I'm not burning my fingers or anything. I just mash it in place. And then I hit them one more time, making sure they're mashed in place. The reason I did that with these is because they're in a different kind of angle, and I just wanted to make sure everything was locked in place and locked down, because this is gonna be where my credit cards are sliding in and out of. So I don't wanna put any undue stress that would cause those to come undone. And this one has a little long piece there, so I'll take that out. That one should be okay. And give it another light just to be on the safe side. There we go. And if you're not sure if this is locked in tight, you can also use some leather glue and just put a drop of it on there so that they stay locked. But as you can see, they're pretty locked in. They're not coming loose. So you should be pretty good right there. That was this was the right side of the wallet. So now we're gonna do the exact same thing on the left side. So when we return, I'll have the left side finished, and then we'll talk about putting these guys together. Thank you so much for joining me today with the second part to our Dillion Wallet series. Please like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you for part 3.